Let's be real for a second. Dealing with other people can be the toughest part of, well, just about anything. Your job, your family, your life. For almost 100 years, one single book has been the secret weapon for figuring all this out. Today, we're going to break down the core ideas from Dale Carnegie's masterpiece, starting with the one insight that changes everything.
So Carnegie kicks things off with this observation that, when you think about it, rings even truer today. You could be the most brilliant coder, the most talented designer, whatever. But if you can't work with people, if you can't communicate your ideas, you're basically putting a cap on how far you can go. This one idea is the bedrock for everything else we're about to talk about.
Okay, so where do we even begin? Carnegie builds his entire philosophy from the ground up with 3 fundamental techniques. And look, these aren't just little tips and tricks. This is a total mindset shift in how you approach every single conversation you have.
The first rule, and this is maybe the single most important rule in the whole book, is this: don't criticize, don't condemn, and don't complain. It sounds so simple, right? But it's incredibly hard to do. This whole idea of kicking the beehive, it never gets you the honey. All it does is get you stung with resentment.
And if you think that's an exaggeration, get this. Carnegie tells the story of Two Gun Crowley, a notorious killer back in the day. So when he was finally cornered by the police in a massive shootout, did he say, "Man, I messed up"? Absolutely not. He wrote a letter saying that underneath it all, he had a weary but kind heart. The point is, if a cold-blooded killer doesn't blame himself for anything, what chance do you have of making a coworker see their mistake by just criticizing them?
And the psychology behind this is actually pretty simple. As the psychologist Hans Selye put it, we all crave approval, and we absolutely dread being condemned. Criticism triggers that deep-seated fear of being rejected, and it just makes people resent you. It poisons any chance you have of actually changing their behavior. Okay, let's bring this down to earth with a real-world story. There was a safety supervisor, George Johnston, who needed his crew to wear their hard hats. At first, he just barked orders at them. And yeah, they'd put them on. But the second he turned his back, the hats came right off. So he tried something else. He started asking them, hey, are those hats uncomfortable? Is there an issue? He gently reminded them they were for their own protection. The result? He got way better compliance, and nobody resented him for it. Same goal, totally different feeling.
Okay, so we've covered what not to do. Don't kick the beehive. But that's only half the story. The next piece, the real secret to having influence, is the fun part. How to get people to actually want to do what you're asking.
Carnegie uses this brilliant analogy of fishing. Think about it. You don't put strawberries and cream on a hook just because you love them, right? Of course not. You use worms because that's what the fish wants. And it's the exact same thing with people. The only way on earth to influence somebody is to stop talking about what you want and start talking about what they want, and then show them how your idea helps them get it. And this is a really deep point when you stop and think about it. I mean, just think about your own day-to-day. Every single thing you did because you wanted something. You wanted to not be hungry, you wanted to get paid, you wanted to feel productive. Every action is driven by a want. So the takeaway is crystal clear. If you want someone to do something, you have to find a way to make them want to do it.
So Carnegie gives us a few super practical ways to start doing this, like right now. First, become genuinely interested in other people. He points to a dog. A dog makes its living just by being excited to see you, and we love them for it. Second, smile. It sounds so small, but it completely changes how people perceive you, even just the tone of your voice on the phone. And third, and this one might be the most powerful of all, remember their name. I want to double down on that last point about names, because its power is so easy to overlook. When you forget someone's name or you spell it wrong, you're sending a little signal that they just aren't that important to you. But when you get it right, that's a whole different ballgame. Get this. There was this guy, Jim Farley, who ran Franklin D. Roosevelt's presidential campaign. He could supposedly call 50,000 people by their first name. Think about that. That wasn't just a cool party trick. That was a political superpower. It made every single one of those people feel seen, feel important. And that created a loyalty that literally changed American history.
And hey, this isn't just for politicians. The famous industrialist Andrew Carnegie, who's actually no relation to Dale, made it a priority to know the names of his workers. In an age of huge impersonal factories, that personal touch was everything. And the result? While his competitors were dealing with strikes and shutdowns, his mills just kept on running smoothly. That's the power of a name. Okay, so we've got the basics down. Don't criticize, find out what people want, but what happens when you just plain disagree with someone? This next part of the book is a masterclass in persuasion, and it starts with an idea that feels completely backwards at first. Carnegie's first rule for winning someone over is, well, it's to stop trying to win. The only way to get the best of an argument is to avoid it completely. Why? Because you can't really win. Even if you score all the logical points and prove them wrong, you've made them feel bad. You've hurt their pride. You might have won the debate, but you've lost the person.
Let me tell you about this truck salesman, Patrick O'Hare. He had this figured out. He used to argue all the time when a customer would bring up a competitor's truck. He'd win the arguments, but lose the sales. So he flipped his whole approach. A customer would say, "Yeah, I'm thinking of buying the Who's It truck." Instead of fighting, he'd just agree. He'd say, "You know what? The Who's It is a great truck. You can't go wrong with them." It totally disarmed the guy. I mean, what's there to argue about now? It opened the door for a real conversation.
So, the principle here is simple, but it's powerful. Show respect for the other person's opinions. Never, ever lead with, "You're wrong." That's like a verbal slap in the face. It immediately puts up a wall, and you'll never get past it.
And you know, Carnegie practiced what he preached. He once made a mistake on his radio show and got this really angry letter from a listener. Instead of defending himself, he called her. He started the conversation by saying, "I want to apologize for the stupid blunder I made." And the effect? It was instantaneous. She was completely disarmed. She went from being furious to defending him and apologizing for her own letter. It's an amazing transformation.
All right, this brings us to the final and maybe the trickiest part of all, being a leader. How do you actually correct people and change their behavior without creating all that resentment we've been trying to avoid? This is where everything we've learned comes together. Carnegie lays out a really clear 4-step framework for this. 1. Always begin with genuine praise and appreciation. 2. Call attention to their mistakes indirectly. Don't hit them over the head with it. 3. Talk about your own mistakes before you ever mention theirs. And number 4, and this one is huge, always let the other person save face. Never humiliate someone. Let's look at a masterclass in this from President William McKinley. He was handed a speech for a campaign event, and it was not good. But instead of ripping it to shreds, he started by praising the writer. He said, "That is a splendid speech, magnificent." Then he indirectly pointed out the problem. He just asked, "Is it quite suitable to this particular occasion?" See what he did there? He gave the writer an easy way out without feeling like a total failure. It was just brilliant.
You know this quote from Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, who wrote The Little Prince? It just says it all. Hurting a man in his dignity is a crime. What matters isn't what you think of someone, it's what they think of themselves. And a true leader never forgets that. Okay, so let's talk about the big takeaway. Because I know what some of you might be thinking. Isn't all this just manipulation? And that's a fair question, but it completely misses the point. This is not about being fake or learning some clever lines to manipulate people. These principles only work if they come from a place of sincerity. It's about a real, fundamental shift in your perspective, away from yourself and towards a genuine desire to understand other people.
When it all boils down, it's about this one simple truth. Every single person you meet is the star of their own movie. They have passions, they have fears, they have things they treasure more than anything. Carnegie called this the royal road to a person's heart. So I'll leave you with this question. What conversation, focused entirely on what someone else treasures, are you going to start today?